Hello. If you are watching, say hi so that I know you're watching, because sometimes I can't see everybody who's watching. Hey, Ma. How you doing? If you are watching, say hi so I can say hi back. Trying to get my lighting together. So I'm in a place where I'm usually not doing a live video. I feel like I look yellow. Okay, that works. I think that works. All right. I'll wait a couple of seconds. Trying to invite some people. Trying to share it. And I can't seem to do that. Why I can't get my life together here? Trying to see how I could share it to groups. Let me see. If you are coming on, hi. Say hi so I can say hi back. I'm just trying to invite a few people in. I can see a number of people, but I can't see who it is. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead. Hey, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. Go ahead, if you don't mind sharing this, I would truly appreciate it. Want to get good buzz out there, and you know, if you have never been a part of any of my live discussions, hey mommy, if you have never been a part of any of my live discussions, I like interaction. I'm also live on Instagram, which I never do. So hello, Instagram world. So if you've watched any of my lives, I like a lot of interaction. So go ahead, get with me, put your comments in the comment section. I do have someone that's supposed to come on and have this conversation with me. She's at work right now. So if anybody else wants to come on live with me and join in the conversation, you are more than welcome to. So as I said, tonight is the first night that I'm doing Mature Conversations. Just to give a little bit more about it, I spoke about Mature Conversation. What it is about is us having conversations as adults that we dance around. Like I said before this morning in my live, a lot of times there is no healing that can happen. There's no learning or revelation that can happen sometimes because we don't talk. And like I said, especially in the Black community, sometimes we don't talk about those uncomfortable things that you try to shy away from. You know, everybody got an opinion on Facebook about something, right? But then there's some topics like you'll see people post about and you'll be like, oh, nope, I'm not getting into that because it's just going to be too much. But I've learned that you can have a difference of opinion. You can have a different perspective. You can come from a different background, different culture, and we can still coexist with our differences. Yes, Ma, yes. Shoving things under the rug. And so I found that when you have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations that people don't want to have, yes, it's uncomfortable. It might get a little rough, but I feel that everyone having that conversation will kind of give a different perspective. None of us are too old to learn or to change our view or perspective. And so my goal is not to change your views on things or change your perspective, but just to give my perspective and also hear your perspective on certain things. I truly feel that in this time, hey Bruce, I'm also live on Facebook, so forgive me if I'm just looking at one specific camera, but I feel that exactly breaking the cycle. us having conversations or uncomfortable conversations, it does break cycles. Bad habits that we've have adopted for years. And so that is really what Mature Conversations is about. I plan to have people come on with me live. So if you have something specific that you've been wanting to talk about, something specific you want to get out here, if you are an author, if you're a writer, if you are a public speaker and it's something you're passionate about that you feel conversation needs to be had, this will be another avenue or platform for you, for us to have those conversations. So if you have any inquiries, you can inbox me or you can email me at havematureconversations@gmail.com. havematureconversations@gmail.com. So now that I got that out the way about what Mature Conversations is, just to let you know, hey Aisha, just to give you what it's about, I will be doing Mature Conversations every fourth Monday at 8 p.m. on Instagram and Facebook. Like I said, I'm totally new to the Instagram live world. So forgive me if I'm a little negligent down here. But okay, so tonight we are talking about the Netflix miniseries MAID. I hope y'all watched that miniseries. So we are going to really dive into this miniseries as it is the month of October, which the month of October is not only known for breast cancer awareness and pregnancy and infant loss prevention awareness, anti-bullying awareness. Oh my goodness, mommy, you have to watch it. You have to. I feel like men and women should watch it. It touched on so much stuff. It didn't even just touch on domestic violence or abuse. It touched on a lot of things, just unhealthy relationships. In romantic relationships, it touched on unhealthy relationships between child and parent. It touched on broken systems. We're going to really get into it. I pray we don't have to have like a part two to this, because I really want to just dive into it. So as I said, all of the things that the month of October is known for, the month of October is also known for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so I feel like this was the perfect time for this miniseries to come out. It was definitely needed. And so if you don't mind, I see 9 people watching. If you don't mind, go ahead and share, because I truly feel us having this conversation will help to bring more awareness. Because like I spoke about this morning, I think that sometimes our ways and our ways of doing things and accepting things, it becomes so normal to us in our world that we don't realize it's not healthy and it's actually not normal. Okay, so we're going to get into it. So the Netflix series MAID, if you have not watched it, please go watch it. I have no stake in, I don't get anything for promoting it besides bringing awareness. Okay, so the main characters are Alex, Sean, Maddie, Alex's mom, Alex's dad, Danielle, Nate, and Regina. Those are the main characters. So the main character is Alex, okay? She's young. She has a daughter. Her daughter's name is Maddie, and she's in a relationship with this guy named Sean, okay? Both of we're going to go into their backgrounds, okay? Both of them come from broken homes. And so when I say both of them come from broken homes, Alex, her mom has what seems to be undiagnosed mental illness, okay? She suffers from some type of mental illness or illnesses that has not been diagnosed, because in the entire miniseries, they talked nothing about her actually taking medication or having medication, but clearly she has some type of mental illness going on, okay? Also, Sean, he has a broken home because his mom was an addict. She was a drug addict. And so he grew up watching his mom on drugs. And hey, hey Martise, forgive me if I'm not looking right here. I'm also live on Facebook. So Sean, his mom was an addict. And so he grew up with his mother really being in and out of his life, seeing his mom high and, you know, that narrative. Both of them come from, I would say, roughly poor backgrounds because Sean and his family lived in, trailer park. Also, his mom had a trailer. So now, Alice's mom also, she owned a trailer. Now, Alex's mom, she owned a house, but it was passed down to her. And she preferred to just move. She was like one of those real free-spirited women who just loved to be in love, and she just went with the flow, okay? So just giving a little synopsis if you have not seen the movie MAID. So here you have this girl. She has a bright future. She is gifted in writing. She is gifted in the area of writing. That's really where her passion is. That's really where her gift is. So much so that she applied to like a great university and she got accepted for her writing. And so just before she decided to go to college for her writing, okay, she meets Sean. She falls in love with Sean. It's something about Sean that just really caught her eye. At the same time, she meets Sean. She also meets a guy named Nate. Nate seems to have all these ideas of his future, what he wants. And of course, you know, we're going to first touch on the good guy versus the bad guy. So we are going to call Sean the bad guy and Nate the good guy. Here you have Nate. It seems like his head is, he got a good head on his shoulders, and he likes to share with Alex what he wants to do, his future plans, and she is completely uninterested, okay? My thing is, don't that sound familiar? Where, you know, a lot of men, they bring up the topic of, oh, why do you women always choose the bad guys, the roughnecks, the ones that want to abuse you? Yes, Nate was so sweet. The ones that want to abuse you, those things, over the nice guy, the guy that's college educated, the guy who has his head on his shoulders, the sweet guy, the one that actually shows respect. Those things. And so she met both of them, what it seems like around the same time at like a coffee shop she used to do her like open mic stuff at. And so she meets both of them, but her interest is completely into Sean. So right before she leaves to go to college, right, for her writing and her writing program, she falls in love with Sean. She completely puts Nate on the back burner. She has no interest in him, even though he clearly was interested in her. She moves in with him in his trailer, falls into his world with his friends, around his family, and then she gets pregnant, okay? And so now she basically becomes a stay-at-home mom. Sean is out working 1 to 2 jobs. He's out working all the time. He's making all the money. And this is how the storyline shows she falls into a cycle of dependency on Sean. Because she gave up her scholarship, or she gave up her entry to go away to college for her writing. She doesn't really have any work experience. And then she gets pregnant by Sean. And so now he's working, he's making all of the money, he's providing the money, he's bringing in money for food, he's providing the food. Everything is on Sean. And he preferred it that way. So how the movie starts really was with her trying to escape at night. And then they kind of backed Will to kind of show, well, what happened that she wanted to escape at nighttime from him, like a lot of women do when they are in abusive relationships. So they replayed what happened, and basically he has a drinking problem. He started drinking, and he started cursing at her, yelling at her, calling her out her name, and he starts throwing dishes, like literally flinging them right over her head. And the daughter is there as well. He punched a hole in the wall. He did not hit her, but he punched a hole in the wall, like right by her. He was flinging dishes, throwing them right over her head. And so it shows her leaving. So it is a lot to unpack. But I'm going to just talk about some of the main things that we really need to bring light to. One of the main things with this movie was they never showed him physically hitting her. They never showed him physically hitting her. And that seemed to be an issue or a fine line where people felt like, what abuse did you get? It was times when her mother was telling her, I'm going to the domestic violence shelter, X, Y, and Z. And the mother was like, oh, please, you need to go back to him. He's such a good provider. Oh, Sean is so sweet, X, Y, and Z. Oh, you basically saying like, you young people these days, what abuse? He never hit you. And it was downplayed. Even when she went to go get resources to get help, they were like, okay, well, where's your police report? Where did he hit you? And she's like, well, he didn't hit me. He didn't hit you, so how was you in an abusive relationship? You never made a police report, so were you really abused? And so that happens a lot. That happens a lot where, because there was no hard impact on a woman's body or a man's body, because we'll get into that too. Men get abused as well. Because there was no closed fist to your face or you were never smacked, it's not acknowledged as you were being abused in any form or fashion. But when you have someone drunk and they're inebriated and you have dishes literally flinging at your face and you have to duck and run for cover and you have children or a child in the house and they're afraid, that is abuse. That's a form of abuse. And that's where the system, it showed how the system was really broken, because she couldn't really get the help and the resources that she needed to get, because they didn't consider being yelled at, being cursed at, being left with no money to get around, being forced to stay stuck in the house or the trailer. They didn't consider those things as abuse. Or because a police report wasn't made, they didn't acknowledge her being abused. They didn't acknowledge what she was dealing with or what the child was seeing at home. They did not acknowledge that. Like, you literally had to come in with bruises on you, hospital reports, police reports to show, okay, well, you really do need this help. And so that really shows how the system is broken and how the system fails women and men who have, and that's being in these type of relationships, who are trying to get out. They're trying hard to get out, but they can't. They can't get the help that they needed. Also, when we talk about broken systems, there was a time where she was talking to the social worker and she needed a place to stay. And she's like, okay, well, do you have income? And she's like, no, I've been, my only job at the time was taking care of my daughter. He had all the money and all the resource, all the money and provision and stuff like that. And the social worker was like, okay, so you have no place to stay, so you're homeless. And she's like, well, technically, no. And so she's like, kind of like, well, what exactly do you want here? Clearly, the girl wanted to get out of that situation before it escalated to a closed fist, before those things, right? But she's like, oh, well, you don't have employment, so it's hard for us to put you in a place with fixed income when you have no income. Then she's like, okay, well, you have to prove that you have income. So she's like, okay, well, how can I prove that I have income or try to get a job if I don't have daycare? Oh, well, you need daycare. And she's like, okay, well, if I don't have a job to get money to pay for daycare, how can I send my child to daycare so that I can work? And it's a revolving door. If any of you women have had children, and especially being a single mom, where you were stuck in a position where, hey, listen, and that's why I said it touched on way more than just abuse. Just even talking about a broken system for people who are in a bad place or a rough phase in their life. It's like, okay, well, I know I've definitely been there as far as, well, okay, you need daycare to work to get a job, but you can't get a job because you don't have daycare. And so it's like a revolving cycle. And, you know, the government, they say they put certain systems in place, but even those, to me, seems like you can only go beyond a certain point. You can only go up beyond a certain point in the system, even with them with vouchers and stuff like that, trying to help you with childcare. Well, then you still have to find a job. In her instance, she didn't have the qualifications. She didn't have the support system. She tried her best, but she had to work with what she had. And so how many people are in those same type of positions where they don't have the support system? They didn't start off in a bad place, but somehow they wind up getting in a bad place. So then you have Regina. When she finally was put on to becoming a maid for like this rinky-dink maid service, Regina was like this really successful, wealthy woman who she had a chip on her shoulder, basically, because she had her own things going on. And so Alex was barely making any money, but she was trying to make it do. Her thing was, I need to at least do this so I can get a pay stub to show that I have a job, so that the government can help me with childcare, so I can get into a better place. And so when she met Regina, Regina prejudged her. That's another issue they brought out in there. When people are in a rough spot, there are people who automatically think, oh, you must be a crackhead. You must be on drugs. You must be a meth head. You must be getting high, that you're in this position, that you don't have a job, that you're in this position that you right now you can't afford childcare. And so then you're not even given a fair chance. She wasn't even given a fair chance at trying to get ahead, because it was like she had this dark cloud of judgment over her. Like, oh, well, are you, you know, she would ask her, well, are you high? You know, can you read? Do you have the ability to read? Do you have any type of qualifications beyond, you know, where you are right now? And like I said, this movie, hey, Veronica, definitely not the case. Things happen all the time. Exactly. And so, like I said, you know, this movie touched on so much more than even domestic violence. It just touched on even a broken system. Not everybody who is in a bad place, or the homeless people you see out in the street, not everybody is somebody who's been on drugs or a drunk, or, you know what I mean, somebody addicted to something. She literally was in a bad place of being dependent on someone who took advantage of that and controlled and had mind control, controlled the finances, had all this control to the place of her very existence was just to be there for him, for whatever that was, right? Because it seemed like all Sean really had was his alcohol, really. So yeah, so even Regina prejudged her. Regina was a wealthy woman. She was well off. She had, honestly, everything that Alex needed, right? Everything that Alex needed. She could have actually been in a position to help her even from the start. You see later on down the line, she does help her, but because she prejudged her, because she didn't have X, Y, and Z. Hey, boo. Hey, Loraya. So, you know, just because she was in a bad place, she held that over her. And so she even, let's talk about that. People who see you in a bad space, who has the ability to help you, but they don't because they are prejudging you. And I just felt so bad for her, because in the beginning, like, you know, as I started seeing her really trying to get to a better place, it was like she just couldn't. no matter how hard she tried, because she did not have a support system. And that's another way people stay in these type of toxic relationships, because they don't have the support system. They have a bunch of people who enable the bad behaviors. They're mutual friends. Oh, he just had too much to drink. You know how he gets. And it's like, well, is that an excuse for him throwing dishes? She got dishes flying over her head. She's waking up to him upset and angry. Hey, sis. So when you have all of these factors, all of these things against her, she didn't have a good foundation or a good support system to help her get out of it. It was like the people around her completely ignored it, because if you're not physically getting punched, then that just means, oh, he's not abusive to you, Oh, he was providing for her. Oh, that's not abuse. Oh, he's a good guy because he paid the bills. Barely. And so it's just like she had all of these things against her. And because, he put her, or she got into the position of solely being dependent on him, she had nothing to build off of, nothing to go off of when she left. So you got Alex, you got Leah, you got Alex. I said Leah because my sister Leah is on here. You got Alex, you got Sean, you got the mother that she can't really depend on in this situation, because she's dealing with her denial of the things she's been through, and her mental illness. Then you have her dad, Alex's dad, who she hasn't really had too much of a relationship with since she was a child, because he was abusive to her mother. So she stayed away for years. And so she did not have a support system. Hey, Lady Grant, how are you? She did not have a support system. And then the actual system, the governmental system, was not that great either. It was a broken system, because you had to have certain qualifications of abuse in order to get assistance. And that is literally why so many people go back to their abusive relationships, because when they do leave to go and try to help themselves to get out of it, they can't, because the resources are there to a certain extent, and something has to be done about that. So basically, she originally had to go through all of these hoops and loops because she never called the police about him throwing dishes. Now, really think about it. If she called the police and it's like, oh, he's in here throwing dishes, acting crazy, he's drunk, they would have come, and all they would have done was tell him, sir, you got to leave from the premises for tonight. Sleep off your drunkenness. Go somewhere for tonight, to a family member's house to cool off. And ma'am, if you want to file a restraining order, you can, and remove yourself from the house. That's all that would have happened. So I'm sure, because they showed other instances when he would have those raging fits, punching holes in a wall and stuff like that, I'm sure she probably thought of maybe calling the police. But then again, what would have really come out of it if he hadn't actually physically hit her? All they would have told him to do was go somewhere and sleep it off for the night. You guys saw Cops. Most of us, we saw Cops for years, the show Cops, where it would be like the domestic violence calls, and they would be like, yeah, we're going to have him grab a couple of items and just sleep somewhere else and sleep it off. And, you guys will work it out. If you want to make a report, you can. What really would they do? If you don't have bruises on you, your lip is not busted, X, Y, and Z, they're not really going to do anything. Yes, Lorraine, you have to watch the show. So now, talking about the broken system, talking about the lack of a support system, talking about that. Then you go to what really was going on with Sean. They showed his background, right? His mother was an addict. He was fighting his own demons, right? And so when you talk about abusive relationships, 9 times out of 10, the abuser and the abused have already experienced some type of violence in their home growing up. So that makes them more susceptible to thinking that some of the behaviors are okay and thinking that some of the behaviors are excusable. Even if as children or growing up, they saw that something wasn't right about it. As you get older, because it was such a norm when they were younger, it becomes a norm when they somehow fall into those type of relationships. And then I was so pissed off with Sean, right? I was so mad at him. I'm just like, you know, we're going to get to his vindictiveness and his control with the whole court situation. But I was upset with him, right? But then as the show kept going on, I realized Sean was not the only person that, I don't want to say was at fault here, but Sean also felt victim in a certain way. How? Ask me, how did Sean fall victim in a certain way? Was when they broke apart, they got a system where they were broken apart. She started being independent, having her independence, all of these things. Of course, you know how that works with a lot of, we ain't even talking about abusive relationships, unhealthy relationships where they can't seem to fully break away because of their history or whatever. When they kind of reconnected, you saw how Sean had started getting himself together. He stopped drinking. He started going to meetings. He started he had an accountability partner, right? Which happened to be Alex's dad. He had an accountability partner. He was on his grind. He was trying. You can see he was making an effort. Whether or not his motives was pure of why he was trying, he really was trying. But when you see they started like reconnecting and she started coming back around, what happened to Sean? He stopped going to his meetings to help him. He stopped going to his AA meetings. He stopped answering the phone calls for Alice's dad to hold him accountable, to where Alice's dad had to come to his house checking for him. Hey man, you haven't been at the meetings. He even got him a job outside of the bar to help him not to keep drinking. He started slacking off there at the job. And that showed me was that there was some type of codependency. So when you have an abusive relationship, the abuser and the abused, somehow they're both codependent on one another. That means it's not just the person that's being abused, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, or sexually, all parts. Not just the abuse is dependent on the abuser, but the abuser is also codependent on the other person as well. And I wasn't expecting them to kind of show that, because you just automatically think a person, oh, they're abusive, right? They're verbally abusive, physically abusive, they're evil, right? But you don't really go deep down into their backstory of one, how they got that way, what behaviors got that way, what happened in their history, how they got that way. But then also, he had obviously some voids that he needed filled where he felt like he needed her. The moment she came back around, he stopped doing the things that he was doing to progress, which led me to believe he had so much brokenness in him too. They were not good for each other. It wasn't just that, oh, Sean was no good for her. Sean was no good for Alex. He was a complete disaster to her, which he was, but she was also a complete disaster to him in ways as well. They were codependent on one another because they both were broken. They both were unhealed. And I truly believe that that's what attracted them to one another. It was that commonality that we're both flawed. We both come from completely crazy homes and backgrounds and things of that sort. So that's what drew them to one another. And, you know, like I said, in mature conversations, we're not going to only talk about like church and spirituality, but you got to kind of think about it. You know, certain type of spirits is going to hover over you, and you're more susceptible to certain type of spirits when you have some unhealed parts, You know what I mean? So they both were attracted to each other because they both were broken. And they felt it was something in Sean that Alex felt that she needed. And it was attached to how she grew up. And it was something in Alex that Sean felt that he needed. And it was attached to his past too. And so I have truly found that, like, in those type of relationships where there's any type of abuse, or if it's just unhealthy relationships, there's a codependency. It's not just on that one person depending on the other. They both feel like somehow they can't function or thrive without one another. And that's how, like, it's festers to stay or be unhealthy. What else was it? Even the thing of, like I said, to touch on why the system is broken, where people, even people of older generations, right? People of older generations have this mindset of, oh, whatever happens in this house stays in this house, and this is just how families do, right? Families fight this way, or whatever happens in this house stays in this house. And I felt like that is the mentality that Alice's mom had when she would downplay, oh, please. And she's like, what even is abuse? You know, you basically saying, like, you young people, y'all just throwing around this word X, Y, and Z. Mind you, they played it back. She literally had a busted lip. That was literally why she left Alex's dad in the first place, because she was getting abused. But back in the day, it was kind of like an unspoken thing. Well, you know, this happened, you know, and we're going to leave it at that. So then all these years later, she's seeing the same patterns in her daughter's home, and she's just telling her, oh, you know, just ignore it. He never hit you, or he's a good provider. Oh, he's so handsome. He's such a good guy, you know, that charming thing. Then all of a sudden is being enabled from his side and from her side. So what support does she have? What support do some of these people have when you have family members enabling this type of behavior, all because he's providing? And then I'm like, well, isn't it funny how when she was in this abusive relationship with him, when she was dependent on him for every dollar, every dime, when he was getting upset because they had no food, he getting upset with her because she's saying, hey, Sean, like, there's no food in the house, but you went and spent our last on beer, something that was not needed, something that's only going to fill you, not us and our child, right? He had no money for food. But the moment she left him, there go that control, right? The moment she left him, all of a sudden, the moment she left him is when she, I'm sorry, I'm getting a call. The moment she left him, right, all of a sudden is when all of a sudden he had money. I was completely flabbergasted. You don't have money for food to provide for the woman that you're keeping stuck up in the house, to provide for your child, but the moment she decides to leave, then you have enough money for a lawyer to use control and manipulation to try to take the baby from her, knowing that you're not stable enough to take her. You might have the job, but mentally and physically, he was not there. He was not there at all to be able to provide for his daughter. But because he wanted to have that control, because he thought that, you know what, if I take her to court, I know she doesn't have money for a lawyer. I know she doesn't have a job, so I can definitely take her to court. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have any money. I have the money. I have the job. So any judge is going to give the child to me. She has no proof that no proof that I hit her. She has no proof that I've intimidated her. No proof about me throwing dishes and punching holes in a wall and yelling and cursing at her. She has no proof of that. All of a sudden, he had money to go to court to try and hurt her, because he knew that all she had was their child. He knew how much she loved their daughter. And so I was like, okay, so you didn't have money to feed your family, but you had money for a lawyer to try and take the child away. He was trying to hurt her and take her child away. Exactly. He didn't really want the daughter. He really didn't want to take care of her and have sole custody. All that was to try to hurt her and have mind control. And I honestly feel like it was also to intimidate her to come back, because he's like, okay, I know she has nothing, so eventually she got to come back. She don't want to fight this fight with me, because any judge, in which the judge temporarily gave the baby to her. And what did the baby do? He fought to get the baby and then never watched his own child. He left the daughter with the former meth addict mother that he's claimed damaged him so bad, but he left his daughter in her care hours on end, days on end, while he went and partied, while he went and hung out and got drunk. How many times do you see that now? How many times do you see that now? I'm sure you know someone, or you may have been through it. You know someone like that, where they don't really want custody of the children. They use it as a form, as a means to control. Again, there go that control. And so it's, again, bringing awareness that abuse is not always somebody slapping you upside the head, slapping you in the face, hitting you with objects. Mind control, manipulation, continually manipulating situations to keep you bound, or to keep you only available to them, for their own benefit, purposely hurting you. That is unhealthy. That is a form of abuse. And so I just found that really crazy. Like, you didn't even have money to provide for your family, but you had money for a lawyer to try to hurt her and take the baby away, because you knew that she didn't have money. You knew that because you made sure she didn't have any, which was just really crazy. So I kind of talked on a lot. I was supposed to have someone else join me, but I know she is kind of caught up at work right now, so I'm just going to continue. I really wanted her to be on because she has actually released books on like abuse and things of that sort. Lakeisha Ramsey. So we talked on how you fall subject to these type of things, right? You fall subject to these type of things because a lack of support system, right? After a while, it was kind of like fighting a never-winning battle. And that's another reason why she wound up going back to him at some point, you know. Then I felt like she also went back to him too because of the commonality. Here we go. Let's talk a little bit about the narcissistic personality traits. He was the guy who saved the day. Her mother was in trouble of losing her house because she was in a nonsense relationship, right? Because her mother didn't know her own worth either. So her mother got into a bad situation where she was taken advantage of, and there goes Sean. Sean comes to save the day. And because, again, that commonality, I feel that's how she wound up falling back and slowly back into that trap with Sean, because they had history, they had the commonality, and he even made the point to kind of put it on her right in her weakest moment, like, oh, you know, I'm always here for you, you know, we're just broken people, we just come from broken places, we understand each other. And that's how the abuser continually connects with the abused, because they find some type of commonality. They feed off of their brokenness and yours, and that's how it becomes that revolving door of unhealthiness. Then we talked about how how the system is broken, how the government has programs and resources put in place, but it's only beyond a certain point. It's very hard to get beyond a certain point. You have to have all these stipulations of how you can get help and all of these things. And like I said before, besides being abused. They just really showed in this show how the system is broken when someone is in a rough spot and they're trying to get out. The government will say, "Oh, we're here to help. Your tax dollars is going to this program and that program," but then you really don't find out until you're in a bad place. You really don't find out until you're in a bad place that the system really doesn't work for me like that, because it's all of these stipulations and all of these hoops you have to go through to get the help and the resources that your tax dollars has paid for. And that's something that needs to change. I think the last thing I'm really going to touch on, might do a part 2, not sure. The last thing that I'm going to touch on is Nate. Remember, we talked about the good guy versus the bad guy. Nate was the good guy. He was the guy who, when she first met Sean and she first met Nate, she knew both of them around the same time, but she didn't want the good guy. She wanted the charmer, the sweet talker, the bad guy, the one who's a little rough around the edges. And she completely ignored Nate. It just so happens that when she decided to leave and she was literally sleeping on the floor of the station for the ferry, right? The ferry station. She literally sleeping on the floor of the station with her child, and the clothes on their backs. She winds up running into Nate, and he can clearly see she needs help. Nate is well off now. He's comfortable. He's I think he was like an engineer or an architect. I think an architect or a developer, something like that. He was very successful, in a position to help her. He looked beyond her current state, and I felt like Nate fell in love with her potential. And I like how they showed that as well, because a lot of times you see or you hear people talk about women falling in love with a man's potential, right? Fall in love with a man's potential and not really see them in the current state that they're in, and not really seeing them for where they are right there, but you hold them to what you think they will one day be, or that in your mind you feel that they should be. And that's how you wind up getting mistreated, right? And the narrative is always a woman falls in love with a man's potential rather than seeing him for where he is. I like how this miniseries showed it the other way around, that it happens to men too. Nate fell in love with Alex's potential. He knew she was a great writer. He knew, she was a beautiful person, that she had all this talent within her, that she was just a great writer, and she had a great mind and all this other stuff. He continually looked beyond her current state. He continually looked beyond all the baggage that came with her, and he wanted to genuinely help her because he really liked her. He didn't even care about Sean and his nonsense. He didn't care about the fact that she was trying to get on her feet. He was actually trying to help her. But in him trying to help her, because again, I feel he fell in love with her potential, in that he wound up getting mistreated. In her trying to get her life better, and her being mistreated by Sean, she mistreated the good guy. She mistreated the good guy because she was still broken and she was still attracted. Something kept attracting her to Sean and the abuse. And I felt so bad for him, because I don't feel like he used his money or his position or any of that to take advantage of her. I truly felt like, listen, this girl is off bad right now. I'm in a position to help her. I like her. I just want her to get on her feet so that she can be the person I see her to be. But the thing is, she didn't know her worth at that time. She didn't know that she really could have that potential. She really did have that potential to get out of that situation. So she didn't treat Nate right. She didn't treat the good guy right. And he was there. I will say though, even though because of all of the baggage she had and all of her lack of self-worth, I will say I do see in moments why she did not want to receive help from Nate. Simply because she's just trying to transition out of this situation where she was solely dependent on a man taking care of her, where literally it's like hand to mouth. If he didn't provide it, then she didn't get it. So she didn't want to, she's trying to get her independence, trying to be able to provide for herself and her daughter. So she didn't want to go from one bad codependent relationship to another codependent relationship. I know she knew that Nate would not take advantage of her. He wouldn't hit her. He wouldn't abuse her. But it was a fact of she did not want to go from one place of dependency to going to another place of dependency, moving from a trailer with Sean and him taking care of her to now a house with Nate and he's providing everything for her. She didn't want to be a charity case, which is actually what she said. So I saw her point in that, but I feel like it went well beyond that. She truly was broken and she could not see her potential, even though Nate saw the potential in her. And that allowed her to mishandle him. And if you really think about it, is another cycle. It's the same thing with Sean. Sean had all of these unhealed wounds. He had all of this brokenness. And because of that, it put him in a cycle of mishandling her in all of those ways. And she just simply did the same thing to Nate in a little bit of a different way. And so I was happy when I was disappointed that her and Nate didn't work out or whatever. But I was happy he finally got himself out of the cycle of dysfunction with her. Like, you know what? This is not benefiting me nothing. She's not ready to move mentally and physically into another space, not even about Sean, but just to want better for herself. I got to get myself out of this unhealthy cycle or pattern. And so it showed that as well. I wanted to touch on Regina and everything, but I think that is it for tonight. I really wanted to talk about this show because it just brought on so much stuff. Just some other things. If you have not watched it, you really do need to watch it because it touches on, it revolves around the abuse, but it touches on so much stuff. Just really how people get prejudged when they're in a bad space. Not everyone who's in a bad space is on drugs. Not everyone in a bad space is a drunk. You know, those things. And it really just touches on people who are abusers, how they fall into that. I don't think that he was naturally a violent person. I truly felt like how he started off and then how he got into that cycle of, oh, she depends on me for everything. And that's how that monster grew. That's how that monster grew. It just really touched on how people get to the place that they are when you talk about domestic violence, when you talk about unhealthy relationships. And so when you're used to something, you don't realize that it's not right until you are out of it. Until you're out of it. And like I said, that was her norm. Her norm was not really going beyond that trailer, and him just providing and bringing in whatever, if anything. And the norm was for him, well, I'm not hitting her, so I'm not abusing her. I just had too much to drink. I'm frustrated tonight, X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to take it out on her. And she wound up falling into the same cycle that she grew up around, which is why she stayed around her dad. Even her dad, he got his life together finally. He remarried. He became a Christian, turned himself over to the Lord, helped other men who was struggling with substance abuse and alcohol and stuff. But she couldn't even see beyond that because she still hadn't forgiven him and she still hadn't healed. But one of the reasons why she couldn't forgive her father was because even though he turned his life around, he never acknowledged the fact of, I caused this damage. I really did beat on your mom when you were younger, and he didn't ask for forgiveness. And so that's what kept her captive to not heal. Hey sis, I might have to take time to watch it. My ex learned abuse from his father, who abused his mother, and the cycle continued. Exactly. That is exactly what happened. It was a lot of denial, and you know, just a lot of those words came up, like denial. You know, they denied that it happened. They denied that, you know, it's actually abuse. You know what I mean? And I truly believe that's why she could not really forgive her father, even though her father turned his life around. You know, he became positive. He became a mentor for Sean to help him get his life together. But she couldn't see beyond the abuse that she witnessed when she was younger. Also because he didn't take accountability for it. He didn't say, hey, you know what? I did mess up. I did do wrong by your mother. I did do wrong by you by allowing you to see it. And that's what kept her bound in that way. And like I said, this show was absolutely phenomenal. It touched on so much. It just touched on, you know, people being in poverty, single mothers struggling to make better for themselves, and how it really is difficult to make better for themselves. You can do it. There are so many thousands of women that do it every day, but sometimes it's hard. It's hard, and especially with a broken system put in place where the government says there is programs to help, and then you got to go through all these hoops and loops to qualify for the help, which is why a lot of people just don't even bother, which is why a lot of people, sometimes it takes them longer to get out of these positions. Like I said, phenomenal show. Please do not ignore the signs, which are control. If nothing about control is cute. You know, when people are younger, and that's why I tell my girls, especially with our oldest, you know, I'll tell her, you know, hey, look out for these things. You're young enough to where you can just peace out, and that's it. There's no attachments, anything like that. Control, mind control, you know, calling people out their names. And I say people because, again, I have to say men get abused too. There are some men who are there not going to put their hand on a woman, and some women take advantage of that. They will, just go straight off hitting men because they know that that man won't hit them back. And so, like I said, there is abuse being done by men and women. So you have to look out for those signs, and don't be in denial and say, oh yeah, you know, he's just a little overprotective of me. Oh, he just loves me, so that's why he's controlling. Oh, he just want to spend time with me, which is why he never want me to be around my friends. No. If somebody don't never want you to be around your family and never want you to be around your friends ever, and they always trying to get you to come over here, and, oh, we don't have to go over there, we don't have to do that, that's control, manipulation. Same thing like I talked about this morning. If it's almost like a pimp worker relationship where you handing over all of the money, you never even see where the money go, because that's what happened. She never saw where the money went. They lived in a trailer. I'm not trying to prejudge. I don't know how much it costs to live in a trailer, but I thought that if you have a trailer, it's just a trailer. I don't know if you pay rent for a trailer, but where did all his money go? Why they didn't have food in the house? The only thing that she tangibly saw him buy was beer. That was it. You know, things like that. Same thing. Stay-at-home moms. You might not even be in an abusive relationship, but just unhealthy patterns can have you feeling suffocated like her. They used a visual or an analogy how she was sunken down. She would lay on the couch and how she was sinking down further and further in the couch. That's literally how you can wind up feeling. As if you a stay-at-home mom, if you staying at home or whatever, that doesn't mean that you don't leave the house. Don't fall into that type of unhealthiness. And it just really showed how you can actually fall into very unhealthy relationships, which somehow turns into some type of abuse. You can fall into, hey, how are you, Letitia? Hey, Sherry. I'm saying hi to those that I can see. I can see a number, but sometimes I can't see the people unless you comment. So yeah, you can fall into those traps. And that's what I said. Sometimes abuse is not always punching and hitting. In abuse, I promise you, sometimes I want to say some people go into a relationship with the intent to abuse somebody. I wholeheartedly believe that. But then this show really showed how you can literally fall into toxic ways, unhealthy ways, and then it turns and escalates into forms of abuse. Strategic isolation, keeping you from family and friends and having issues with you working or want you to stay home. That is exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. The moment she got on her feet, she got her little car. She was getting a little system going. She was finally getting that little system going. The moment she went back over there to him, he made her car disappear. While she was asleep, he went and took the car back to the guy who gifted her the car. And then when she told him, hey, I'm running out on minutes on my phone, can you give me a couple of dollars? Then he wants to prioritize about food. He didn't care about food when he got to buy beer, right? But then he wanted to prioritize about food. Oh, well, I mean, what do you need a phone for anyway? I mean, you don't go anywhere, so we can pay it later. Then her phone gets cut off. Now she's cut off. She doesn't even have a phone to even try to make the money from being a maid. It was just wild, crazy. Abuse isn't always physical. Yes, it was just crazy how she fell back into it. So you can see how she fell into it in the first place. It turns into these little subtle things. Oh, you don't got to work. I got it. Oh, no. What you need money for? No, I'll pick it up. I got it. You don't need the money for it. Blah, blah, blah. He literally made her car disappear. That was one of her forms of dependence that she had finally got when she decided to leave. And he's like, oh, I don't want you driving that car that he got you. Blah, 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 blah. Knowing full well she's there 24/7. She's back there 24/7. It's not like she's cheating. He took her car because he knew that she started becoming independent. He saw that she didn't need him. She didn't have to depend on him. And that upset him. It upset him because he had all of that brokenness in him. He had abandonment issues. And so his abandonment issues that he didn't deal with from his mother, he took out on her. It was just crazy. That show was absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, it touched on way more than abuse. It touched on toxicity in relationships, even in parental relationships. It showed how unhealthy her relationship was with her dad and definitely between her mother. You saw it, Letitia. That show was good. Like, I just had, I told you, this was the first night of me doing mature conversations, and I really wanted to start with this because honestly, when I posted about the show, it was so many women that commented and then that reached out and was like, I felt like I was watching myself in certain aspects. Even if they had never been abused, they saw themselves with the relationship between Alex and her mom. Her mother was toxic. Her mother obviously had some type of mental illness that went untreated. And it was just bad. It was a good show, but it was just a train wreck. And I felt so much empathy for the mother too. Like, she been through stuff too. And I truly feel like because of some of the stuff she went through, it attributed to her delusion. Like her delusion about a lot of stuff. Like she just was so far from reality. Yeah, she was bipolar. One minute she absolutely adored her daughter. The next minute she cursing her out. The next minute she don't want to have nothing to do with her. Next minute she want to be grandmother of the year. Sis was all over the place. And you can see how Alex really didn't have a support system. She tried so hard. She tried so hard to even make a support system with her mother, and it just did not work. It could not work. And so it just really showed on the unhealthiness in relationships, all types and all dynamics of relationships, and how we sometimes don't see that this is actually our reality because it's so normal to us. It's normal to us. It's normal in families. It should not be normal, but it's normal in families where you got the mother curse. Hey, Talia, I'm actually about to close out. I think I'm just rambling on now, but it showed the toxicity even in parental relationships. And it's just like, really think about how many families are like this, where the mother is cursing out the child, the father cursing out the son, the mother and the mother and the adult child fighting, the mother continually putting the men before the child, when they're a child and when they're an adult. When do you advocate for your child? Even as an adult, you don't stop becoming a parent, right? I want to make sure I get your comments. It affects the children so bad, especially when there's no one there to acknowledge what's going on. Exactly. And you're not, oh, thank you. I'm not rambling. Okay, because I started feeling like I was. So yeah, it's cold. I'm getting ready for work. Just was stopping by. Okay, cool. But yeah, like, it had, the dysfunction in families have become so normal that it's normal, that you don't realize that this is dysfunctional. That some parents really don't realize, like, hey, you're the parent here. Like, unless you're older and you're getting like dementia, or you can't care for yourself, like, sis, this is not normal. It's not normal to curse out your child, even as an adult. It's not normal to be jealous of your child. Like, but really look at it. There are a lot of families like it. And like I said, I had so many women reach out to me and say they felt like they were watching their life, and it really didn't click off to them that, hey, how I'm living, this is not normal. This is unhealthy. They had to see it. Isn't that how we have change? Isn't that how we make a turning point in our life with anything? We have to see ourselves sometimes in another person, or in a situation like this, in a show, where like you feel like, wait a minute, this is me. This is what I'm going through. And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation, because there are different forms of abuse. And some people still suffer abuse even as adults with their parents. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. But it becomes a norm. Mothers and daughters competing. Fathers and sons. You really hear it more so with mothers and daughters. Mothers competing with their daughters. You know, her mom said a lot of crazy stuff, and it kind of came out of left field. Like, what? I don't understand. So I just really wanted to have that conversation. I pray that you share this. You may not be a victim or have never been a victim of any type of domestic violence. You may not have been ever slapped by a man or a woman. You may not ever have been punched. You may not ever had to have call the police, or you may not ever had to be in a position where you are fearful for your life, or fearful that you are going to be physically harmed by your significant other. That may not be you, but somebody you know, it's them. And so I pray that you share this, not only because I be seen and I'm trying to put mature conversations out there, which I am trying to put mature conversations out there, but I need you guys to share this, because someone you know still has blinders on their eyes, and they need to get out of the situation. And let me say this, it is very rare, but it has happened, where people have been in toxic relationships where they're both doing toxic things and behaviors, and they were able to heal properly and function normally in a relationship. That is extremely rare. Amen, Letitia, you're a survivor. See, if I would have known that, I would have had you on here with me. Absolutely, I would have. So, if you are not a victim, if you have not fallen victim, you know somebody who still is in that type of situation. They may not be getting hit, but they're being manipulated. They're being mind controlled. They're being told that they're stupid, they're dumb. They're being told that their life won't be nothing if they leave. They are fearful of leaving because they feel like they don't deserve anything better. They don't deserve anything more. There are people who are getting verbally abused, and because they're so used to it, they don't even realize it's verbal abuse. They're being talked down to, demeaned. All of those things. You know somebody. And I need you to share this to put awareness out there. You might know somebody who have a toxic relationship with their parent, and the cycle needs to stop. And I truly believe that this show, they didn't say it was based on a true story, but they did not say that it was a true story, but this is the reality of thousands of men and women. This is their reality. They are in abusive relationships with their parents. They're in abusive relationships romantically. Some are in abusive relationships with friends. And so I need you to go ahead and share this. Bring awareness that there are different forms of abuse. There's different ways that it looks. There are some ways that you can see that it can turn into abuse because of the unhealthiness, because two people have gotten together who have not healed, or because a parent has not healed and they have projected on their child and created a cycle. I pray that you all have been blessed by the first episode of Mature Conversations, and I pray that I opened up somebody's mind and gave some type of perspective on so much. I could have kept going on because there was other stuff to talk about, but I think the Lord wants me to end here. So thank you. Thank each and every one of you ladies and guys, if you watched, for having this conversation with me. Now, I will say every fourth Monday at 8 p.m. I will be doing Mature Conversations. If you have suggestions of what you want to hear me talk about, or if you want to talk about something and you want to have that conversation with me, a mature conversation with me, you can come on live with me. Just inbox me. Let me know what you want to talk about, and we will get together. And like I said, every fourth Monday, you can DM me or you can email me at havematureconversations@gmail.com. I am very personable. If you do not know me personally, we can chop it up. We can have a mature conversation, because this is to open up people's minds, perspective, bring awareness, and heal. Amen. Thank you so much for watching. Love each and every one of you.